What's up, guys? It's your boy Justin back with another game review. Today we're reviewing The Legend of Heroes, a tier of Vermillion, which was the first Legend of Heroes game to get released in the West. This is the first game in the Gagharv trilogy, which was released on the PSP, right, by Bandai, and was developed by Nihon Falcon, right. So I am not sure if this game takes place in the same universe as the Trails of Cold Steel games. If it did, this would be at least 400 years before the events of Trails of Cold Steel. If it even takes place in the same universe, I have no idea, right? So yeah, this is a turn-based RPG, right? And it plays kind of a lot like the Trails of Cold Steel games, right? Though, like, obviously there's some changes, right? It has like 16-bit-esque graphics, and what's cool about this game that the Trails of Cold Steel games didn't have is this has a pet system, right? Where you could start off with either one of three animals, either a rabbit, a cat, or a dog, and the dog's like a Yorkie, if I'm not mistaken, right? And the pets are pretty cool because they can they follow you around finding items for you, right? And they can also, if they're happy once in a while, they'll boost you before battle and boost your defense. But other than that, they don't really do much, right? So yeah, the story for this game is you play the main character Alvin, who looks different in the game for some reason. On the cover art, they have this like classic JRPG art style, and in game the characters, well, they're obviously 16-bit, but they have like a different art style, right? I'll show you what the characters look like. Yeah. So here's what some of the characters look like. You have Alvin, his sister Emile, Rotis, Mile, right? And here's some of the other characters. You have like 12 party members in the game. You don't have access to all of them at once, right? It's one of those things where as you go along and play the game, certain party members join your party and then leave the party, right? So the main story is about basically a holy war where you're these two orphans, Alvin and Emile, who's living at Cathedral, which is like the holy capital of Elfidine, which is the land where you're from, right? And they get attacked by this evil cult called the Octum's Apostles, right? And the holy capital is destroyed, and you're separated from your sister, and you grow up being raised by one of the three sages, Ramirez, right? In this isolated village, right? And then when he dies and passes away, he gives you a sacred relic, right? And you leave town with your best friend Mile, who, there's Mile there, he has a boomerang, right? And you go on this journey looking for your lost sister Emile, right? While you go on your adventure, you get involved with this holy war between Octum's Apostles and the disciples of Bardus, which is the main religion of Elfidine. You become an adventurer, right? Though that's one of the problems I have with the game. The game, they have guilds in almost every town, but you can't. Other than when you first became an adventurer, you can't. There's no side quests in the game, which that kind of sucks, right? But yeah, you become an adventurer so you can travel, right? and you get involved with this holy war against Octum's apostles, which you find out are not after just you, because you have like a sacred treasure which you're trying to deliver to one of the other three sages, right? But they're also after your sister because she's Durga's daughter, which is a medium of the goddess Durga that gets reincarnated every, like, every lifetime, right? And they need her for some special ritual. So half the game you spent with Mile, your best friend, and teaming up with random characters, right? Only for halfway through the game, you find your sister and she gets kidnapped, and then at that point, you join up with Rutis, who's like a female, like, thief, right? And then you have to go on this journey to get the other sacred treasures, to get the magic sword, right? So you can cut through a barrier so you can go rescue your sister Emil and your best friend Mile, who was also kidnapped by Octum's apostles and may be dead. We don't know, right? So a lot of the game is mostly you going from town to town with your best friends, with your party members, right? Solving problems, going to, like, dungeons to kill monsters, looking for people, stuff like that, right? It has pretty much, I wouldn't say it has a generic RPG fantasy story, but it's more like a classic fantasy story, right? And what I liked about the game is that there's no fast travel, right? But there are map markers. So when you're going through trails and stuff, they'll tell you which direction you need to go to get to the next town, right? And there's, like, in the menu, there's like a history log which recaps you on what's going on in the story, which this game takes about 50 hours to beat, but in your save file, they don't tell you how long you've been playing the game, so I have no idea. I've been playing this game, for like 3 weeks? I have no idea how long it took me to beat this game. Right? Yeah. So the game was mostly easy, right, until the final boss, where the final boss, I'm not gonna lie, he was a son of a bitch, man. The final boss, it was this 2-stage boss battle where first you fight the main bad guy of the series, of the game, right, and then you fight, like, evil boss, right, and I fought that final boss like 6 times, only for me to, like, have to go and look up how to beat him. Which, unless you use a special magic spell called anti-magic, that final boss is, like, impossible to beat, right? I should mention the game has, like, limits on how many items you can carry. You can only carry 10 items, and the game is grindy as fuck. Like, items are super expensive, equipment is super expensive, and it also does the thing just like the Trails of Cold Steel games, where enemies don't drop money, they drop like a thing that you have to exchange at like stores. Though you can exchange them at almost every store, which is like, why even bother, right? And since this is a 16-bit game, obviously you equip new weapons and they don't show on your character. Would have been nice if they had at least illustrations of the weapons, like, the Dragon Quest games would do back, even the 16-bit ones. Though the graphics, honestly, for this game were 16-bit-esque, but, like, some of the special attacks and skills reminded me of, like, the PSP, like, remasters of, like, the Final Fantasy games, where they updated the special effects. There are summons in the games, but like this game, but the summons pretty much all look the same except for the fire guy, right? And this game, you have like special skills that characters can use that don't require MP, right? And you do have like a gauge for your special attack, but you also have lots of magic spells like white spells and black spells, and you don't just have healing spells and attack spells, but you also have spells to buff and debuff, right? Which I mostly never use the debuff spells, but you're gonna need to use the buff spells, especially near the end of the game, right? And this game has this weird thing where the game, it's the thing where it's almost feels like there was this thing where the game would not necessarily, like, it's not like with the Romancing Saga games where the monsters' stats would scale to you, but it would be like a thing where, like, if you leveled up too much, the monsters would be super weak, but then you would get to the next area, and then, like, suddenly, they're doing, like, they take twice as many attacks to kill, and then, like, they take, like, a huge chunk of your health, right? And no matter how much I grinded in the final area of the game, the fucking monsters would take a shitload of damage, right? And they would do a shitload of damage to me even when I leveled up a couple levels to the point where I was getting next to nothing XP, but they were still doing massive damage to me. And as far as I knew, I had the best equipment in the game, right? Yeah, so that sucked, right? But overall, the game's easy until the final boss, and that final boss was a motherfucker. So I'm just gonna go my likes and dislikes. I liked the classic aesthetic of the game. I like the character designs, even though I think I would have preferred these character designs compared to the more modern character designs in the character portraits, right? Right. And I like the pet system, right? I like overall, I like the combat, though a lot of people say the combat's slow and repetitive. You can pretty much say that about every RPG, turn-based RPG. There's no auto battle button, which I don't even want to. I fucking hate when people bitch about there's no auto battle button. If you want auto battle button, go fucking play shitty mobile games, in my opinion. Right, now I'm gonna go to the dislikes of the game. Holy fuck. Other than playing the game for the story, there's not really much else going for the game, right? So it's like, what's the point of going out looking for cool equipment or whatever when there's no cool portrait, there's no cool, model, so it's like, what the fuck is the point other than you have to? Right, so that there's no point in collecting equipment in this game, right? You're better off just selling it, to be honest. Right, the game is repetitive, right? There's a reason why I didn't beat this game until now, even though I had this game for years, because I would get fucking bored and I would quit the game because it does get boring, right? Because if you're not a fan of the story, there's not really much reason to to play the fucking game, right? And like I said, I didn't like the fact that the game, there's no game log they don't show you how long you were playing the game in the save file. Your best bet to figure out where you're at is the game is at the history menu, because when I got to that pretty much is the only way to mark your progress, other than the fact there are 4 chapters there's only 4 chapters in the game, right? Because when I got to the final area of the game, I was at 95% history, so that's pretty much the only way to gauge where you're at the fucking game, right? other than the chapters. Um, there's no retry button, so if you die, you're fucking dead. You have to reload. You have to reload your save file. Which this is a PSP game, so you can pretty much save whenever you want. But still, that fucking sucked, right? And as far, I don't remember if there is a difficulty setting. But like I said, the game is easy until the final boss, which you can only pretty much beat the final boss if you're using the anti-magic, which is a black magic spell, which two of your party members can use, right? Yeah. So other than that, I honestly, at best, this game is a 5 out of 10. Even though I like the game, and I would probably play more games by these developers in this series, you know, there's not much going for the game. Which I forgot to mention that this is not the first Legend of Heroes game. I found out later that you know how like I said, like Trails of Cold Steel feels like a Persona clone. Well, there's another similarity between Trails of Cold Steel and Persona is that both series started off as a spin-off of another game series. So, like, the Legend of Heroes games, the first one was the fourth Dragon Slayer game, which was like a game series for like the PC Engine or some fucking thing. Like the first Legend of Heroes game came out for like in 1989. Like holy fuck, who knew this game series has been along that long, man? Holy crap. So yeah, that's 5 out of 10. That's it for this review. I still have a couple weeks before the sequel to this game comes out, so maybe I'll play. You know, we'll do another poll, and you guys will vote for the next game review. I don't know. We'll see. If this gets 20 views, we'll do a poll. But if not, I'll just play that game next. So.